We've all been there, haven't we? It's maybe 2 in the morning, and your brain decides now is the perfect time to run a full disaster simulation for something that's almost definitely not going to happen.
Oh, yeah. Or you're stuck rewriting that email you sent 2 weeks ago. Again.
Exactly. It feels like your brain's running this super processor stuck in just a relentless negative loop.
Yeah.
Won't shut down.
It really is like the T-1000 from Terminator 2, isn't it? You think you've stopped it, you've put the thought down, maybe tried freezing it with logic.
Yeah.
Nope. The negative thought just reforms and keeps coming, no matter what you do.
That relentless loop. I mean, we usually just call it overthinking, but
Yeah.
science has a term for it, right? Repetitive negative thinking.
That's the one. RNT. And that is exactly what we're digging into today. We're unpacking the research, the literature survey on RNT.
Okay.
We want to show you, the listener, what this kind of perpetual thinking machine actually does to our brains, to our bodies, why it's such a universal human thing. I mean, systematic reviews found phrases for thinking too much all over the world.
Wow. Really? All cultures?
Pretty much confirms it's just part of the human experience. And crucially, how new therapeutic ideas suggest we can maybe finally break that cycle.
Yeah, and one thing that struck me straight away from the research is that RNT isn't tied to just one specific issue or disorder. It's everywhere.
That's absolutely right. The data shows it's a transdiagnostic construct, fancy term, but it just means it cuts across almost all the diagnostic lines.
So it shows up in lots of different conditions.
Exactly. From just, general well-being struggles all the way up to really serious psychiatric disorders. We all do it to some extent, which is why understanding the mechanics is so important for everyone.
Okay, so let's get technical for a second. How do researchers actually define this loop? If you're wondering, am I doing this? What are the key signs?
Well, they use tools like the Perseverative Thinking Questionnaire, and they've basically boiled RNT down to 5 core things. First, it's repetitive, goes round and round. Second, it's intrusive, pops into your head unwanted. Third, you have difficulty disengaging, hard to switch off. Fourth, you feel it's generally unproductive, like you're spinning your wheels.
Right. Nothing gets solved.
Exactly. And fifth, crucially, it can completely capture all your mental resources, takes over everything.
So it basically hijacks your attention, your energy.
Got it.
Yeah.
Now, the sources mentioned RNT shows up in 2 main ways, depending on whether it's focused on the past or the future: rumination and worry.
Precisely. Rumination, this comes from early work by Susan Nolan-Hoeksema, is mostly past-oriented or maybe present-oriented.
Okay.
It's that passive, repetitive thinking about feeling bad, why you feel bad, what it all means.
Yeah.
That endless loop of, why did I mess up? Or what does this say about me now?
And that kind of thinking, the rumination, tends to lean more towards depression, right? Looking back at old hurts, flaws.
Correct. Then worry, on the other hand, is mainly future-oriented.
The what-ifs. Exactly. That anxious apprehension about things that might go wrong, potential threats, negative outcomes down the line. And this tends to generate more anxiety.
That makes total sense. Anxiety looking forward, depression looking back. But here's a really interesting stat I saw. Research shows that for a huge number of people, like 85%, their worries about the future are actually directly tied to bad stuff that happened in the past.
Ah, that is interesting. So even when the worry feels like it's about tomorrow, the fuel for it often comes from yesterday.
Seems like it.
That suggests interventions probably need to address those old wounds, even if the person is presenting with future-focused anxiety. The loops are really tightly wound together.
Okay, so let's get into this crucial difference now. Because thinking deeply isn't always bad, right? Sometimes you need to analyze a mistake to learn.
Absolutely.
But there's a huge difference between like a constructive debrief and just sinking into this dark, negative spiral about yourself.
This is where the research makes a really important distinction. 2 functionally different subtypes of rumination. You could think of it like deciding whether to use a big failure to become Batman.
Okay. Purposeful, active.
Right. Or using that same failure to become, a classic supervillain, just nursing old grudges.
Gotcha. So which one is the villain path? The bad one?
That would be brooding. Brooding is the maladaptive one. It's passive. It's comparing where you are now with these like unachieved or maybe totally unrealistic standards. Why aren't I better? Why did this happen to me?
Just dwelling on it.
Deep, self-absorbed dwelling on the negative feelings. And this subtype, brooding, strongly predicts bad outcomes. We're talking depression, problems with cognitive function.
So that's the villain's origin story, all focused on past hurts, perceived slights.
Exactly. The constructive alternative is reflective rumination.
Okay.
This is more purposeful. It's kind of self-distance thinking. You're trying to genuinely understand why you feel distressed, but with the aim of preparing for active coping, finding solutions.
And this one's actually okay, or even good.
Well, researchers found that when they statistically controlled for the brooding part, reflection itself showed no significant link to depressive symptoms.
Interesting. So it might even have benefits.
It seems so. Some research links reflection to better executive control, even enhanced creativity sometimes. It can be a useful tool for clarifying goals, figuring things out. It's analyzing the problem without attacking yourself for it.
Okay. But I know for me, sometimes I start trying to reflect purposefully, and then it just spirals into panic or self-criticism. Where's the line? How does it flip?
Ah, that's the catch. That's the danger zone. Reflection can very quickly slide into maladaptive brooding if you hit a wall. If you can't generate useful solutions or insights, the analysis stalls, and the mind, instead of continuing to problem solve, kind of turns on itself, starts the self-attack.
Right. Okay. So we see the dark side. Brooding is a major problem. But what's it actually doing to us physically? Is it just, draining our energy, or is R&T literally changing the hardware?
It seems to be the latter. R&T isn't just a mood state. It involves these big disruptions across three major brain networks. Think of it like a struggling air traffic control system in your head.
Okay. Tell us about that. Which systems are failing?
So first, you've got the default mode network, or DMN. That's the one that's active when you're thinking about yourself, your past, your future internal focus.
Right.
During rumination, the connectivity patterns in the DMN are altered, often amplified. Then there's the frontoparietal network, the FPN. That's your executive control center, top-down thinking.
The boss.
Kinda, yeah. And the salience network, SN, which is involved in shifting your attention flexibly. R&T seems to mess up the coordination between all three. They aren't working together smoothly.
And there's physical evidence, too, not just how they're functioning.
Yeah, there is. Structural brain scans, neuroimaging, show that chronic rumination is actually associated with reduced gray matter volume in certain areas,
Like where?
particularly regions like the anterior cingulate cortex, ACC, and parts of the prefrontal cortex. These are areas critical for inhibitory control.
So the very brain parts you need to stop the runaway thoughts.
Precisely. It's like chronic rumination is literally wearing down the brain's braking system, reshaping the architecture of control.
Wow. Okay, so that structural damage, that functional failure,
Yeah.
it creates this huge cognitive tax, right?
Yeah.
We know our working memory is super limited. We can only juggle, what, like 3 to 7 things at once?
Yeah, that classic finding, Miller's Law, roughly, like limited memory slots on an old video game console.
Right, and R&T just comes in and fills all those slots.
Ruthlessly exploits that limited capacity, yeah. It overloads the system with all this task-irrelevant negative stuff, regrets, criticisms, fears.
So if your few available slots are full of that junk.
Your brain literally can't execute the positive plans, the problem solving, the focus you need to break the cycle. And there's that super strong correlation, like R.97, between working memory capacity and overall executive function. If one tanks, the other goes with it.
Okay, that cognitive load sounds exhausting just on its own. But the research on the stress system, the HPA axis, suggests R&T does something even worse. Kind of programs the body to react more strongly to future stress. How does that work? Non-habituation.
Yeah, that finding is really profound. The HPA axis is your main stress response system, releasing cortisol. Normally, if you face the same stressor repeatedly, say, a tough weekly meeting, your body adapts. It habituates. The cortisol spike gets smaller each time.
Okay, that makes sense. You get used to it.
If you ruminate after the stressor, the research predicts non-habituation. Instead of getting used to it, people who ruminate actually show an increased cortisol reaction the next time they face that same stressor.
Whoa. So your brain is essentially learning to escalate the threat level for everything, every time.
That's what it looks like. This chronic, never-resolving elevation of stress hormones then ramps up the risk for all sorts of physical problems, hypertension, metabolic issues, and of course, severe chronic anxiety. The stress loop just feeds itself because the rumination keeps the alarm bells ringing constantly.
Okay, this is sounding pretty bleak. So if we know this is happening, if we recognize we're doing it, why can't we just stop? Telling yourself, don't think about that awful thing feels completely impossible.
Ah, yes. That brings us perfectly to Daniel Wegner's brilliant discovery, the ironic process theory. It explains exactly why trying hard to suppress a thought makes it come back stronger. It's paradoxical.
This is the famous white bear experiment, isn't it?
That's the one, the classic study. He told people not to think about a white bear.
And of course, all they could think about was,
White bears. They actually showed a rebound effect. To check if you're not thinking about the white bear, part of your brain has to keep an eye out for it, constantly bringing it back into awareness.
right.
So the group told not to think about it ended up being more preoccupied with white bears than the group told to actively think about them.
So the clear takeaway is trying to wrestle your thoughts into submission, actively suppressing rumination, is probably just going to make it worse.
Yeah.
You can't fight the white bear without constantly checking if it's still lurking in the corner.
Exactly. And this mechanism, this ironic rebound, is a huge driver of what we often call analysis paralysis.
Yeah, getting totally stuck.
That state where you overthink so much, you just can't make a decision or take action. It often comes from that fear of making the wrong choice or perfectionism or just general anxiety. The cognitive system gets gridlocked.
We see how this shows up across different conditions too, right? Like executive function overload and ADHD,
Yeah.
or maybe the need for absolute certainty in OCD.
Yeah.
It manifests differently, but the paralysis is similar.
Precisely. The underlying mechanism of getting stuck in the thought process is common.
Okay, we've really established how insidious RNT is, how it works biologically, why it's hard to stop. So what actually works? It sounds like just telling people to challenge their negative thoughts might backfire because of that ironic process thing.
That's the crucial insight behind a lot of modern effective treatments. They don't focus so much on battling the content of the thoughts. You know, whether that email really was that bad or if you can actually afford the mortgage.
Okay, so what do they focus on?
They target the underlying beliefs we hold about thinking itself. This framework comes from Adrian Wells and his model of the cognitive attentional syndrome, or CAS.
CS, okay. And this is driven by metacognitive beliefs, beliefs about beliefs.
Sort of, yeah. Beliefs about thinking, how we think about our own thinking processes. These beliefs are what keep the cycle going.
How so?
Well, you have positive metacognitive beliefs. Things like, I must worry to be prepared, or thinking this through helps me cope. These beliefs make R&T seem useful or necessary, so you keep doing it.
Okay. It feels productive, even if it isn't.
Exactly. And then you have negative metacognitive beliefs like, my thoughts are totally uncontrollable, or this rumination is damaging my mind, or worrying like, this means I'm going crazy.
And those lead to?
Meta-worry. Worrying about the fact that you're worrying, which of course just adds another layer to the whole problem.
Got it. So the key intervention isn't arguing with the worry itself, but changing those beliefs about the worry. And this is the core idea behind metacognitive therapy, MCT.
Exactly. MCT, developed by Wells, directly targets those positive and negative metacognitive beliefs. It aims to show you that, for instance, you don't need to ruminate for hours to cope, and that your thoughts, while unpleasant, aren't inherently dangerous or uncontrollable.
And does it work? What's the evidence?
The clinical findings are pretty impressive. There was a large randomized controlled trial comparing MCT directly with traditional cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, for major depression.
Okay.
The results showed MCT had significantly better outcomes. They found a 74% recovery rate for the MCT group compared to 52% for the CBT group.
Wow, that's a big difference, 74 versus 52%.
It really underscores the value of addressing the process of thinking, not just the specific topics you're thinking about.
Okay, so what does MCT actually involve? Is there like a specific technique people learn?
One of the core tools is something called the attention training technique, or ATT. Yeah. It's usually a short audio exercise, maybe 12 minutes or so. It's designed specifically to train your attentional flexibility and control, kind of like doing reps for your focus muscle.
And how does that help with rumination?
Well, neuroimaging studies have actually shown that practicing ATT can reduce that problematic functional connectivity in the frontoparietal network, remember, the brain's control system, during periods of rumination.
So you're literally training your brain to disengage more easily, to shift gears.
That's the idea, training the brain to shift away from the sticky, repetitive brooding, maybe towards more helpful reflection, or better yet, just shifting attention entirely when needed.
Interesting. So training the brain's ability to shift gears. Are there other approaches that also focus more on relating differently to thoughts rather than fighting them?
Yes, definitely. Mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, or MBCT, is another well-established one. It teaches skills like non-judgmental observation. They call it decentering.
Decentering?
Yeah, learning to see your thoughts as just transient mental events passing through your mind like clouds in the sky, rather than absolute truths or commands you have to obey.
Okay, creating some distance.
Exactly. And then there's acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. ACT emphasizes cognitive diffusion ways to unhook yourself from your thoughts.
Unhooking.
Yeah, recognizing thoughts as thoughts and choosing actions based on your values rather than being pushed around by the content of the worry or rumination. Techniques like dropping anchor help you ground yourself in the present moment and accept the difficult thought is there without getting swept away by it.
So acceptance rather than avoidance or struggle. Seems like a common theme.
It really is. Acceptance of the thought's presence, not necessarily its content, and focusing on valued action.
Okay, we've covered a lot. The mechanics, the brain impact, why it's hard to stop, and some effective ways forward. Let's zoom out to the bigger picture now because, well, we live in the digital age, right? Which feels almost perfectly designed to fuel R&T.
Oh, absolutely. It can be a perfect storm. Social media especially seems tailor-made to crank up anxiety, relentless social comparison, just sheer information overload,
Ah.
all of which can significantly pour fuel on the R&T fire. That positive metacognitive belief, I need to compare myself to others to know where I stand, gets reinforced constantly online.
Though the research on tech isn't always simple, is it? I remember seeing a study about kids, 11 to 13-year-olds, where the ones with smartphones actually seemed to do a bit better on some well-being measures than kids without them, which seems counterintuitive.
That's true. Context really matters there. The study found that simply having a phone wasn't the determining factor for harm. The key difference was how they used it.
Ah, okay.
Specifically, the act of public posting on social media was linked to significant negative outcomes. Kids who posted frequently were about twice as likely to report symptoms of severe depression and anxiety compared to those who didn't post much or at all.
So it's the performance aspect, the constant comparison that comes with putting yourself out there publicly.
Seems like it. That's what appears to fuel the rumination cycle, the judgment, the comparison, the worry about perception.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Right, let's try and boil this down. What are the absolute key takeaways for you, the listener, from our deep dive today?
Okay, three big ones, I think. First, really learn to spot the difference in your own thinking. Is this brooding, that passive, stuck, self-critical loop? Or is it reflection, that more purposeful, analytical attempt to understand and solve without the self-attack? Knowing which gear you're in is crucial.
Right, brooding versus reflection. Got it. Second key takeaway.
Remember the ironic process theory, the white bear. Actively trying to suppress or fight a thought is likely counterproductive. It often makes it stronger. The goal isn't necessarily to eliminate the thought, but to change your relationship to it, acceptance, diffusion, letting it pass, not internal warfare.
Don't fight the white bear.
Yeah.
And the third point.
The most promising interventions focus on your metacognitive beliefs, how you think about your thinking. Challenge those beliefs that tell you worry is essential, or that your thoughts are uncontrollable and dangerous. Especially now, with social media constantly feeding comparison, questioning why you feel the need to engage in that thinking is key.
Excellent summary. Okay, so we know anxiety originally evolved to keep us safe,
Yeah.
right? And we just talked about how reflective rumination can sometimes lead to creative solutions. If overthinking in some form is just fundamentally human, here's a final thought to maybe chew on. How do you actually harness that incredible analytical engine we all have, use it for constructive planning, for goal setting, for learning, without letting it inevitably drag you down into that dark pit of brooding? Where is that balance?
That is the challenge, isn't it? Finding that sweet spot between productive analysis and destructive loops. A very worthwhile question to reflect on. Purposefully, of course.
Indeed. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.